no moral law. Yeah.
You know, and if you look at our government and the powers that they have taken, and you compare them to God's attributes in the Bible, who is God? He's our ruler, He's our Savior, He's our great physician, He's our provider. And what is government now has become? Government is now our ruler.
Oh, wow. He definitely
it's
provider.
now trying to be our provider. It's now trying to be our great physician with health care. You know, government is our judge. It's our father. It punishes us. You know, all that. So when you see government taking all these roles, God's roles in our lives diminish because we're now looking to government to fulfill God's role. And government cannot fulfill God's role. But when we allow it to, it's going to take over everything. I mean, eventually, you're going to have no control over your life. That's why Christians should be the biggest supporters of limited government, because limited government cannot oppress Christian people. And, you know, if you look back, Christians have been oppressed and Jews have been oppressed ever since they existed. I mean, they're the first people because, you know, the evil one is after them. And if you look at Luke, I think chapter 4, in the second temptation of Christ, when the devil leads Christ up, and one of the second temptation is, I will give you power, you know, over all, dominion over all the powers of the world. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the world belongs to Satan and that he has control, and he lures people with the promise of power. So, and what's happening in government? People are lured by the promise of power. So the evil one is using government and big government in order to oppress Christians and Jews, and I mean that's ultimately where that always leads. Well, so that's why religious people have to support limited government and get government out of the way so that we can serve God as He directs our consciences, and we don't have any interference from the government.
Remember, you and I was in a meeting a couple of days ago. There was a lady from China, had lived in China, and she talked about how the Chinese government was their God. You remember that conversation the lady talked about? I can't think of her name. But she says they gave you a slip for your food, they gave you this, they gave you that, and it took away the creativity of everybody.
Right, exactly.
Because the government thought for you, and there was no motivation to do anything because the government gave you your land, they gave you your food, they gave you your car to drive. Matter of fact, in China, they tell you how many kids you can have. You can't have, I think they have a limit on number of girls you can have, I think.
Yeah, right.
So the government has taken control over there. And we Americans think, oh, that'll never happen here. Because, you know, I think sometimes Satan is not, in a sense, jump on us and just overtake us. It's always subtle. That's why he's called a deceiver. He's always subtle in how things move along and how things progress. Before you know it, we're there.
Right, and it's always presented as a positive thing. It's always presented, you know, as an agent of light, where, oh, I'm just going to give you this, and, you know, I'm going to give you free health care, I'm going to give you free whatever it is, but at the same time, he's putting handcuffs around
you. Something for nothing,
yeah.
I read a book by Tony Brown. I read a guy named Tony Brown's Journal. And he talked about entitlements in there. And I never thought about this. He says, but there are corporations, some people always equate that poor people get entitlements. But he says corporation gets entitlements.
Oh, yeah.
I really never thought of that. He says, there's, this is an interesting thing. He talked about welfare. I think he talked about welfare. He says when in entitlements, he says when people get welfare, the poor get welfare, if they get $10, by the time money gets to them because of the money's taken off the top, they end up getting about $5 or whatever.
Right,
But when the corporate people get their money from entitlements, it's a lot more than, but it's all entitlements, all entitlements.
Yeah, it's all
It's
welfare.
all money, but it's all welfare, and we only think that poor people are on welfare, but he says, there's an interesting thing in his books he talked about, and made you open, he wrote this book like 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, talk about what the things we're doing now in America today. It's strange to see.
That's what TARP was. I mean, TARP was a gigantic transfer of wealth from the middle class to gigantic corporations.
Wow.
You know, $700 billion. That comes from us.
Wow.
And it's given to these enormous corporations that have failed. You know, we hear the too big to fail, but so they haven't done what they need to. For whatever reason, their business model didn't make them successful. So we take money from from people like us, and then also successful small businesses, and we transfer them over to these giant corporations and prop them up so they can just fail some more. I mean, it's just awful.
Good thing about this. Remember the large corporations that failed, and all those large corporations that failed. I remember when Obama came to office and we gave these stimulus packages just to boost them back up.
Yeah.
If you look at it, how many people actually went to jail over this?
Well, I don't think any have.
If you and I, or the average man out on the street would have took this money, they would have put them under the jail.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing that corporations, and they get these bonuses, you know, and they go about their business, but when they leave, they get these great bonuses and steal from the people that's on the bottom who work hard every day to make a living.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing against corporations. You know, I work for a corporation,
right.
but I do have something against the government that gives them my tax money because they've failed and they're going to get rewarded now.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Sorry, I can't support that. And both parties do it. They've done it for a long time, and it needs to stop.
Yeah, you're right. Jonathan Wakefield, author of Saving America. It's a great book from a Christian's perspective. It has a lot of good stuff in here that talks about the principles that we should live by, reducing all regulations, different topics in here. Here's one called Economic Freedom, Free Markets, and Forcing the Cuts, different things, our responsibility. Wow, that's nice. You had a subject on here, our responsibility. What is our responsibility?